Welcome to My Line of Work. Here we dive deep into the world of work, what people do, why they do it, and how they got there. From dream jobs to unexpected paths, every story matters and every career has a story worth sharing. Today, our special guest is Jacinto Villarreal. Thank you so much for being here.
Luis, how are you, man? Good to see you.
So good, man. Thank you for coming. And go ahead and tell everybody what you do.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Luis.
Yeah,
I think this is a great podcast, a great starting point for the future, our youth. And so, really, I'm honored to be here today.
Oh, no, thank you so much for being here.
What do I do? I'm a pharmacist. Cool. I mean, that's my job. But father, friend, an uncle, a lot of life. But the subject is, my line of work, and it's being a pharmacist.
Cool.
And let me see, should I just work it backwards? Or
how'd you get into that, or what inspired you to do that?
I think it's a series of opportunities and doors that opened for me.
Okay.
And I think that's just the best way that I could describe it. A door opened and the choice was, do I walk through it or do I not?
Okay.
There wasn't this when I was 8 or something that said, ooh, I want to be a pharmacist.
Yeah.
that wasn't the trajectory.
Yeah. That wasn't the dream.
No. I think in some point there was a seed of like, ooh, I want to be a physician.
Okay.
But that wasn't those doors of opportunity, and I'll get to those in a minute.
Sure.
Changed, or I would say the doors changed. They just didn't open up for me the way it was the way it usually is. Okay. Let me walk it backwards.
Sure.
So I'm a pharmacist. I work at Christus Children's Hospital.
Okay.
They're in downtown San Antonio.
Okay.
And I've been there for about 22 years.
Nice.
And one of the things that I think I would like to share with anybody that's in any kind of line of work is to explore the mission statement of the person that employs you, or what work you stand for, or because I feel mission statements are important.
Okay.
And if you don't know what the mission statement is, then you're really just punching a clock.
Yeah.
And so for me, the mission statement at Christus Children's is to extend the healing ministry of Jesus Christ.
Okay. Nice.
As soon as I signed on for that, I'm there. If they change the mission statement, I'd walk because it's got what I stand for.
Yeah.
So that's what's driven me for the 22 years that I've been there.
Oh, that's cool.
And that really kind of just stuck with me. And so being there for 22 years, I started off as what do you call it? It was a clinical coordinator position.
Okay.
So I started off with learning and developing pharmacy services for adult patients.
Okay.
And 22 years ago, that hospital, in its rich history, had adult and pediatric patients at the same time.
Okay.
And so I signed on for the adult clinical coordinator position.
Okay.
And just finishing my residency, and I'll get into that in a minute. But that was my first job, and after all of my pharmacy school training, and it was really an honor because I would say they took a chance on me. Usually that type of position wasn't given to someone until they had 3 years of experience under their belt to kind of facilitate. But I had a really good boss at that time, director of pharmacy, that believed in me and said, "Hey, we're gonna develop you. We're gonna grow you." And it's been a great privilege, and I've learned a lot pretty much every day since then.
Oh, that's great.
So clinical coordinator means I work with pharmacists, I work with technicians, and physicians and nurses, dietitians to take care of patients to the best that we can.
Yeah.
And that's still somewhat of what I do now. Right now, over the 22 years, it's changed.
Okay.
It's now a standalone children's hospital, and I work primarily more on the obstetrics side of the hospital. I work in the IV lab and do sterile compounding, and I still coordinate a lot of the pharmacy services that go on there.
Yeah.
Things need to get repaired. Things need to get worked up. Things need to be reviewed, examined. And right now there's a lot of drug shortages. And so that's a a problem like going in tomorrow, there may be a drug shortage that we'll have to find an opportunity or a different agent to use in place of.
Yeah.
But it's a dynamic environment, and the group there is so cool. It's very family friendly, and we really work together.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of like a little bit about where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
But before I got there, I did a residency. I mentioned that,
Yeah.
and that was 1 year. Because one of the things I learned after graduating from pharmacy school was what's that philosopher like Aristotle?
Mhm.
I knew nothing.
Yeah.
I know nothing. It's
I
like
know what I don't know. I don't know what I don't know.
And so I thought, I need practice. I need
Yeah.
to learn what I've just learned,
Yeah.
but independently.
Yeah.
And so I spent a year doing a pharmacy residency year, and that's right at the beginning of that's when I got married. But that year allowed me to explore different areas of pharmacy independently, explore my autonomy, and get feedback. I
Yeah.
needed feedback to say, if I do this, is that all right? If I do that, why not?
Yeah.
And so I was able to travel and give poster presentations on some of the research that I did as a resident. But I spent a full year in the same hospital, learning, getting feedback, and practicing independently. And then that's what led me to where I'm at now. So
Nice.
I'm working it backwards.
Okay.
Before that, I was at the University of Houston College of Pharmacy.
Mm-hmm.
4 years is what it took to get the title or get the certificate, the degree. It's a doctorate of pharmacy.
Okay.
And my brother and I both took that journey on.
Nice.
And we lived together in Houston and studied together in Houston and, lived life for 4 years there.
Yeah.
And it pretty much went pretty quick
Yeah.
in hindsight. But I had to go to pharmacy school to get that degree.
Yeah.
And in pharmacy school, there was lots of opportunities there. And the opportunities that I took were to do rotations in various places and spaces. Some in Houston,
Mm-hmm.
some in San Antonio, some in New Mexico.
Okay.
So I was able to use what college offered me to go to different places and explore them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it just helped me grow and get different pieces of information and perspectives of what the profession called for and working with. Like in New Mexico, I worked with the Native American population.
Oh, nice.
And in San Antonio, I worked with right now future areas and met and networked with people that opened doors for me to get to the job where I'm at.
Yeah.
And that was something new for me in pharmacy school, was that subject of networking,
Okay.
meeting people, learning people,
Yeah.
growing with people, learning their stories, because you never know if they're going to be your employer or if you're going to employ them.
Yeah.
And we learn lots of different elements from one another
Yeah.
when we spend time with them.
That's true.
And so from pharmacy school, let's see. Well, before pharmacy school, I was at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio.
Okay.
And I was studying biochemistry there. And I initially joined that program to get a PhD, but life happens and grades matter there.
Okay.
And also money and funding going into the research. I went from the PhD, I pivoted to a master's degree in biochemistry
Okay.
and studied yeast ribosomes. Whatever's in your bread, I was studying the yeast that causes it to form and such. But yeast ribosomes was my thing, and chemical cross-linking of yeast ribosomes. And
Yeah.
what does that have to do with anything right now? For me, it was fascinating to learn about God's creation, even in the smallest places.
Yeah.
And so, in the moment, research and experiments, man, they're daunting. I would be there in the lab till 3:00 in the morning, or studying yeast ribosomes.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it's like, wow, would you do it all over again? I would. I
Yeah.
think I would. It was It was fascinating. It was a challenge. Um, and as I spent those years there, I realized that research wasn't for me, and I wanted to provide for a family in the future.
Huh?
And I had been working as a pharmacy technician for
Okay.
about 6 years, somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah.
And someone tapped me on the shoulder, pretty much, rather physically, and said, "Have you
Yeah.
thought about going to pharmacy school?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, no, but I think I'm gonna."
Okay.
It was around that time when I was finishing off my master's degree and the thesis and all the writings that went into it, that the opportunity to go to the University of Houston College of Pharmacy presented itself that
Yeah.
summer. I took the PCAT, uh, and my brother and I both took the PCAT at the same time,
Yeah.
found out what classes still need to be completed before getting in, and did it. And before you know it, we were in a classroom in August. And you're like, whoa, here we
Wow.
go.
Yeah.
And it's like amazing how when you take those little steps of action, where you'll be, a month from now, a week from now, a year from now.
Yeah.
Um, and it really, in some respects, it wasn't a checklist. It was more of a just like either like a calling or a drawn. It just flowed that way.
Yeah.
Um, my brother was finishing his schooling at Texas Lutheran, and I was finishing my uh, degree there at the Health Science Center. And one day in the afternoon, we were just talking to each other and said, "Hey, how about pharmacy school? Let's do it." And so
Oh,
we teamed up and went in that direction. And we're 5 years apart, so
okay.
we're able to, we live together. We loved each other. We love each other, and
Yeah.
it was fun. It opened up a lot of interesting avenues and friendships.
Okay. Mm.
Um, and then before the Health Science Center, I spent time 4 years at Texas Lutheran College in Seguin,
Okay.
just 30 miles from here.
Yeah.
And I got my biology degree there with a minor in chemistry, and that I think officially a biology degree, and I studied chemistry as well.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where I- it was also an opportunity for me to grow because my mom and dad didn't go to college,
Okay.
and so I was the first to go, and it was like an unknown, uncharted path to where I'm at now
Yeah.
because I'm working it backwards,
Yeah.
and I really didn't know what college was about. Was about
Yeah.
when I graduated high school. I'm like, I saw a commercial ad for working in a lab and doing I think it was like 9 months, and you can work in a laboratory. I thought, that's fun. I like biology in high school. I think I'm going to do that. And
Yeah.
I had a counselor that said, "Well, have you thought about college?" And she made me think. And maybe that's a theme that's there. It's like, have you thought about,
Yeah.
and giving time to thinking, truly thinking about what that next step means, and
Yeah.
where it can lead you. So taking time to
Yeah.
think, and I'm glad she did. So we toured Texas Lutheran. I got in, and I'm like, "Whoa, this is new."
Yeah.
I didn't stay on campus. So I didn't live on campus. That was too
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
So I lived in New Braunfels and commuted back and forth.
Okay.
And let's see. The way it was presented to me was like college was like high school after high school, but more intense,
Okay.
and more was expected of you. I'm like, okay, well, I can commit to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you learn, so many things, but I really enjoyed the theology elements that they required,
Yeah.
and I had some good mentors there that offered me some opportunities. And let's see, uh, this story is, I feel like it's like almost surreal that I actually
Yeah.
lived it, but I'll say it this way. So I go there my first semester and, do what I had to be done.
Okay.
And then one of my professors there, his name was Professor Juan Rodriguez.
Okay.
And it was part of the Mexican American Student Association there. And he said, "Hey, you like biology, and have you thought about doing an internship this summer? Or what are you going to do this summer?" I said, "Well, I'm going to go work at a department store."
Yeah.
I'm like, or I think I worked at Sonic, was my first job.
Oh, nice.
And then I worked at, there's a department store called Wieners. And you're like, Wieners? It was a store. And it was a department store. And uh, I told him, I said, that's where I'm going to go work, and save some money for the next semester.
Yeah.
He goes, well, I thought about an internship. And I go, well, what's that? What do I do? He found this little advertisement on the wall that was posted. Say, hey, do a summer internship at the University of Colorado Boulder, and explore more of your degree profession. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, fill it out, turned it in. He wrote me a good letter of recommendation.
Yeah.
And I got a letter, I think that spring, and said, hey, welcome to the University of Colorado Boulder.
Wow.
We're going to send you a plane ticket. We're going to give you some spending money per month. And your plane leaves, I think it was at the end of May. Like June, July, come back in August. And you're like,
Wow.
I'd never been away from home. I'm like,
That's incredible.
I'm like, I've never been on a plane.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I go, yeah, Mom, I'm going. And she goes, well, where are you going to live? I go, the dorm. It says here in the dorm.
Yeah.
I go, what do you got to take? We just started gathering the things together. And before you know it,
Yeah.
I'm on a plane.
Oh,
And I was getting a
awesome.
stipend for doing what I like to do. And I'm like,
Yeah.
golly. And so I got to see the University of Colorado Boulder and
Nice.
learn science and different types of experimental procedures and different elements of what I had read in high school, because I still hadn't gotten to my upper level classes
Yeah.
at Texas Lutheran.
Okay.
And I'm like, wow, this is cool. I was working with radioactive molecules and learning, what DNA. And I'm like, this is surreal. This is a big, huge blessing.
Yeah.
I come back, I'm more invigorated to take on my sophomore year. And then Professor Rodriguez, have you thought about what you're going to do this next summer?
Yeah.
And I said, well, looking for an internship now.
Yeah.
And when I got one.
Really?
I got another one. It was at the University of Texas Health Science Center. And
Nice.
in this case, they would put you up in an apartment, and
Yeah.
they give you a stipend as well, and you get to practice. And
Wow.
I'm like, no way. This is
Yeah.
like 2 for 2.
Yeah.
And each semester was a challenge. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't have computers. I had to use a typewriter. You had to backspace and white it out. And
Oh, yeah.
so things were a lot different. It was a lot more pen, paper. You got to show up for class. You gotta be there. You got to meet the teacher and develop those relationships, because I needed different letters of recommendation.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, sure enough, the Health Science Center.
Nice.
And then my junior summer, another one. It was at the
Really?
University of Texas, Austin. And
Nice.
that was studying, it was a certain enzyme that rats metabolize, but it was learning like some rat metabolism. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, it's an opportunity to learn science from a different angle, and met
Yeah.
new people from, I think, somebody from England and different other schools. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was surreal talking about this now. Like, could it happen again? I don't know. I think just the
Yeah.
doors of opportunity opened.
Mm.
I took a chance, and I think that's another important piece. Is like, give yourself the opportunity to take a chance.
Yeah.
Take a chance. Shoot
Yeah.
your shot. I've said that in different spaces about, you only get so many shots to shoot baskets. Shoot your shot. Follow it
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Texas Lutheran took me to different places and different trainings and learning new things.
Yeah.
And where else? Yeah, well, and then I think there was a pivotal point there in college where one of my professors said, hey, because I told him I wanted to go to medical school.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you're doing good in your biology classes. Just take the MCAT and then we'll figure it out from there. Well, I took the MCAT and I didn't do too good.
Oh, really?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And if you've tried to take the MCAT and not studied for it, which I didn't, you have to do it. You have to take it again, but it's not until a year later. And I'm like,
You have to wait an entire year.
yeah. And I was about to graduate, and I'm like, I need a job. I
Oh,
can't
wow.
just like, I needed a job. There was a sense of urgency at that point to say, okay, so what's my next choice? What other things can I do?
Yeah.
And they mentioned graduate school, and that's how I got to the Health Science Center. And they said, well, take the GRE and study. I studied.
Yeah.
Well, I studied, and I got in, and I think that's kind of how my time at the Health Science Center unfolded.
Yeah.
Because I knew I needed something. I at that point in time, there was no I didn't have a concept of a gap year to figure things out.
Yeah.
I needed some employment, and my graduate school trainings, I thank God, was sponsored enough so that I received a stipend while
Okay.
I was getting my degree.
Oh,
So
nice.
so I was getting paid for the research that I was doing.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. So I know that's a long story,
No, it's good.
because I think there several people will tell you, well, to get to pharmacy school, you graduate high school, find the path to do the prerequisites, get into pharmacy school, and go. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, that wasn't me. I kind of went
Yeah.
left and right and zigged and zagged, and
Yeah.
yeah. So that's kind of the short of it, but in a
Yeah.
long way.
Yeah, it's a lot of the interviews I've been doing. I don't think anyone had a direct path to what they're doing, even myself.
Ah. You want me to
And
interview
so,
you next? Just
yeah,
kidding.
sure. So one thing you mentioned was that you were the first in your family to go to college. Um, and so can you speak a little bit on the challenges of that?
Mhm. Challenges. I think since mom and dad didn't go to college,
Yeah.
and they gave their all for me to pursue what I enjoyed doing or wanting to do.
Yeah.
The challenges I think I laid on myself, which was I wanted to make them proud.
Okay.
So there wasn't. I didn't have this perspective that, well, I'll try, and if it doesn't work out, well, then It was more like if I took a class, that was my job.
Yeah.
I treated my classes as jobs, meaning they're, if you fail or if you don't pass, um, there's wasted money there.
Yeah.
Wasted money on the table. This is not Dad worked at the Mission Valley Mills there in New Braunfels when it existed,
Yeah.
and Mom worked at a Firestone just down the street from our house.
Yeah.
And so, they struggled to um, give us their best so that we could do our best.
Yeah.
And
You had this determination to, improve, right?
mm, absolutely. And Dad worked hard, Mom worked hard, and they did. I had to work hard
Yeah.
because there's. I felt like there was no second chances. It was that wasn't something that I could bank on. It's like do your best in the moment with what you have, and when you don't know, go ask for help. Because I remember in an English class, my first semester there at Texas Lutheran, it was like he didn't even want to grade it. He said, "You just need to rewrite this. I'm not going to give you a grade now." I'm like, I mean, I think I went home, I cried. I'm like,
Another opportunity.
I'm like, you don't know how long I stood up writing this.
Yeah.
But I took it in stride, and it
Yeah.
made me grow. It made me realize that
Yeah.
writing matters. If you can communicate clearly, people will recognize your efforts and stuff. So, but
Yeah.
struggles, I would say writing was something that really was a challenge for me, and um, yeah,
Yeah. And so you went from high school to
college.
college,
Mhm.
and then from after you graduated with a biology degree,
Mhm.
you
Went to the health science
you
center.
had to well, you took the MCAT, didn't
MCAT.
do well,
Mm-mm.
so then you took the GRE.
Right.
Are those two different available options to someone that's doing pre-med that wants to go to graduate school?
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh yeah, there's
And what is the difference in those between an MCAT and a GRE?
the GRE is the graduate record exam, so that takes you to graduate school,
Okay.
and that's the PhD route.
Okay.
And then the MCAT is the medical college admissions test.
Oh, okay.
And so
Okay.
so when I took that and didn't do well,
Didn't do well.
the GRE is what my professors mentioned, and
Yeah.
lesson learned, study. Because I think I reflected back on a summer internship where the people that were going to medical school, I mean, they were burning the midnight oil looking at these MCAT tests and
Yeah.
doing practice tests, and I'm like, I should have done that. If I really
Yeah.
wanted, I should have done that. But
Yeah.
I took it.
Well, like you said, you didn't know what you didn't know.
Yeah, and as first generation college person,
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then after graduate school,
Mhm.
you mentioned a test you took with your brother. What was that?
Yeah, the pharmacy college admissions test.
Okay, so the PCAT.
Yeah.
Okay. And that
Yeah.
one you did well and got accepted.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we were thinking of UT and then University of Houston, and something to pay attention to is when admissions took place. And I think UT had a closed admission system, and University of Houston had an open admission system, which allowed us to
Mm.
transition from graduate school to pharmacy school without a gap year.
Oh,
And so
nice.
that was
Okay.
something to explore. Is that we applied to two different programs,
Okay.
and the one that offered us that opportunity without having to wait, that's one we took.
Yeah.
And we also had an aunt in Houston who's a very dear aunt, um, my aunt Vera, and so we had family in Houston. I think that just kind of also swayed the matter. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Okay. So all in all, how many years about does it take to become a pharmacist
It-
on
the
average?
the straight shot,
Yeah.
um, 5, 6.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh,
The
interesting.
straight shot. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
like
yeah.
this is where I'm going. I'm determined. I'm in it to win it. Boom.
Oh, wow.
But for me, it was like 4 years at TLU, 4 years at the Health Science Center, 4 years in pharmacy school. So that's
Okay.
12 that I would say I had the liberty to pursue,
Yeah.
but I didn't have um, huge loans, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I did have loans.
Yeah.
And that was something else. You know, when you invest in college and you take those loans, that's where you really look at each class as
Yeah.
the job that you're calling yourself to
Yeah.
do.
It's costing you money.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a return on investment. You know, you do
Yeah.
well, you graduate on time, you get your job, and you kind of
Yeah.
can grow forward.
Yeah. I have an opposite opposite experience from you.
Uh,
So I'm the youngest of five, and my brother, he was the first generation. Parents didn't go to college. You know, he struggled to figure out what is this. How do I sign up for classes? How many classes do I take? Right. By the time I come around 7 years later, he's like, take 12 hours, and he showed me all the ropes, and so I had a easy comparatively an easy route. And then you talked about opportunities. When I switched my major from engineering to education,
mm,
there was a grant that my counselor told me. He says, "Oh, you speak Spanish. You're from Mexico. They're looking for bilingual teachers, and it'll pay for everything, like all your school." At that point, because my parents didn't make much money, my first year of college was covered by financial aid.
mhm.
But from my sophomore year on, it ended up being 4 more years. I took 5 years. The grant paid for everything. Everything. It paid for all my classes, books. I got spending money.
Wow.
Yeah, it was such a blessing. I had the blessing of having a brother, and four siblings ahead of me that went to school. And then the grant, like you said, right?
Yeah.
Like I just took the opportunity, right? I wanted to be an engineer because my brother was an engineer. But I took the opportunity to become an educator, and I loved it. I taught for 12 years, and it was incredible.
Awesome.
Um,
Praise God.
okay, so let's fast forward. Now you're a pharmacist. What does that look like day to day? What your schedule, your hours, work clothes?
Yeah.
Just kind of all of it.
Let's see. I mean, this coming week, I'm working in the central pharmacy there at the hospital.
Okay.
So I will most likely be working in the IV lab where I have to don on blue scrubs that I put on at the hospital.
Okay.
I'll put it out there as a general, almost kind of like an awareness in a way.
Uh-huh.
When I put on those blue scrubs there at the hospital, it's already been laundered and cleaned to go into my sterile space.
Okay.
When people wear scrubs in a general space, you don't realize how much, I'll say it, bioburden you take with you. Like I've got bioburden, you got bioburden, and I can't
I'm
just
gonna
go
start
like
using that word when I tell my kids to go shower.
You got your bioburden.
Go wash
is
off
heavy.
your bioburden from the day.
Good one. Good one. Yeah. But it's so true. I mean, because if I were to launder my scrubs at home,
Yeah.
do I use Tide? What do I use?
Yeah.
And is it clean enough? What have you? So I put them on there at the hospital.
Okay.
Shift starts at 7. And it's a kind of, I scrub in. I have to wash my hands, clean the dirt from under my fingernails all the way to the elbow.
Yeah.
Um, what else? I wave my hand and the door opens like Star Wars.
Really?
So I'm counting in like I'm gonna do surgery.
Yeah.
And because basically everything that I make when I get into the IV lab is going to go into somebody's body, and it has to be sterile. There can't
Okay.
be no bacteria. There can't be
Yeah.
nothing that has the potential to cause an infection. We're there to
Yeah.
alleviate pain, not cause pain.
Yeah.
So I'll wash my hands, use a little pick. Then I'll go and use a scrub that has like alcohol and has a chlorhexidine on it, like a little lotion, dries off, and then I'll put in my sterile gloves. Oh, sorry, I've got even like I put a smock on top of my scrubs, then gloves.
What's a smock?
Oh, it's like a lab coat jacket that's just it's a lab coat jacket that's disposable.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll have a bonnet and a mask, and I'll put even booties on as well. So it's almost like I'm working with super hazardous material, and in a
Okay.
way I am, because I also help with reviewing chemotherapy agents, and you don't want that
Okay.
on you.
Yeah.
And you don't want to take any of that home with you.
Okay.
So I'm all gowned up, garbed up, scrubbed in, and me and another pharmacy technician for about 2 hours will take on the day's work of what's been requested from a NICU pharmacist or PICU pharmacist, central pharmacy clinics, and these labels will get generated that have sterile compounding expectations.
Okay.
And so there's that, and as well as chemotherapy. And then there's another one called total parenteral nutrition, which is TPNs in a bag, that are really little neonates and pediatric patients' meals when they can't eat and their GI doesn't work.
Okay. Yeah.
So from proteins and fats and carbohydrates and um, but electrolytes, all that I'm compounding for like about between 10 and 17 patients
Okay.
per day.
Yeah.
And so it's an 8-hour shift. So right now I work 7 to 3:30,
Yeah.
and that's what I'll probably be doing this coming week. When I'm not doing that, I'm working on special projects for the hospital, whether it's a physician asking for something to be added to the formulary, something that needs to be quality controlled and inspected. I'm a liaison between my boss and the technicians and the pharmacists to try and keep the pharmacy moving forward
Yeah.
by keeping everybody informed. And communication is such an important thing, I would say, in every job.
Yeah.
Because I think if the communication's rich, everyone's in the know, everyone knows what direction we're going.
Yeah.
When communication is poor, everyone's to their own devices, and then it's hard to manage.
Yeah.
But yeah, communication is key.
Okay. Very cool.
I also like precept pharmacy students, and I precept pharmacy residents, people that I once walked in their shoes with. Like,
Yeah.
so we do some teaching there as well.
Okay.
And then other days I might have a clinical day where I work in the obstetric area of the hospital, which is working with nurses and physicians to make sure that that care is as seamless and that it's less impeded by pharmacy in any way. Meaning, do you have what you need? Everything's communicating. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. And are there any weekend requirements? Are you ever on call? Anything like that?
Not so much from my position. We are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So the pharmacy there never closes.
Yeah.
And we have people that have dedicated themselves to, say, the overnight shift or evening shifts. And so I don't take call. When it comes to weekend work, I think I've shared my faith with them that I worship on Sabbath, on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed that that this institution has allowed me that.
Yeah.
But I haven't. I'll say it this way: if there's a need, I will go to that need.
Yeah.
I mean, because people get sick, people have babies or
Yeah.
traumas and whatever might happen, and all hands on deck, and that's important. I mean,
Yeah.
whether it's a snowstorm or what have you, sometimes the need is there, and we're helping those that are in the most need in a hospital bed.
Yeah.
Weekend requirements. I think lately I've been working some Sundays because
Okay.
there is a need there.
Yeah.
Mm,
Very cool.
yeah.
Okay. Um, and you mentioned you've been doing this for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Is there, um, are there any changes that you've experienced in that time frame that, like, what, obviously there's been changes,
Yeah.
but what are some things that have, changed along the way?
Well, this hospital, as I started our conversation, was once an adult and pediatric hospital.
Yep.
And I was hired more on the adult side.
Yeah.
And so when the choice was made for the institution to be the first standalone children's hospital in San Antonio,
Hmm.
um, I worried just a little bit. I mean, do I have an opportunity to stay or am I expected to be dismissed? I
Okay.
mean, that was kind of like a reality in my head.
Mm.
And so I told him, I said, I'm here for the mission statement. If you find, if you see me as an asset to the department, to the mission, I'm here. You want me to
Yeah.
mop the floors? I mop the floors. You want me to do whatever you want me to do? I'll do it because I really
Yeah.
enjoy working here.
Yeah.
And so I would say, by the grace of God, I was able to weather the storm there. Or not the storm. I weathered the transition
Yeah.
and found my niche in obstetrics, IV sterile compounding, and as a middle manager.
Oh,
And
nice.
so I give God praise and glory for allowing me that privilege. Because by
Yeah.
the same token, this particular, and I'm going to call it a profession, because I feel when we talk about employment, is it a job? Is it something that just pays the bills?
Yeah.
Or is it something that it's your life calling? And in some
Mhm.
ways, I believe, that my life's calling was to be a pharmacist,
Yeah.
and I was able to provide for the family on my own single income,
Yeah.
and I have a beautiful wife that has partnered with me to kind of raise the family under
Yeah.
these conditions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say anything that's changed. Uh, yeah, being a standalone children's hospital is one. Two, the changes are like there's more drug shortages now than there were way back then.
Yeah.
And so that's a task now that a lot of maybe patients don't realize how significant that can be.
Yeah.
And in the background, which is where I think pharmacy lives, we do our best to keep that from being an issue. And
Okay.
we haven't had very many moments where, sorry, we don't have any more.
Yeah.
We've always been able to find an alternative that to provide.
Yeah. And so a drug shortage, kind of, delving into that a little bit, a drug shortage on it's the supply, like what's coming into you
Mhm.
guys to be
Yeah,
able to create.
yeah.
Or can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about
So,
that?
like, for example, if there is an IV compounded product, it's like an IV bag that has medication in it,
Okay.
and we buy it from a company, and it's provided to us on a month-to-month basis. We pay the money, we expect it to show up, but
Yeah.
when that company um, fails to provide enough supply for the month,
Yeah.
what's our alternative?
Yeah.
Then we have to grab a smaller vial and grab a bag on the shelf and compound it ourselves.
Okay.
There are so many rules and regulations now that really task pharmacy to be extra diligent because there have been in situations where harm has taken place when some rules and regulations have been violated.
Okay.
So drug shortages, we have to make our own. If we have to make our own, it doesn't have as long of as an expiration date as what we purchased. And so now it's a
Mm.
shorter expiration date
Yeah.
that creates extra work on top of the regular workflow to compound.
Yeah.
And so that's a change. We're doing more of this compounding. And then over time, rules and regulations have made it even more stringent in terms of what we compound and how good it is, um, how stable it can be
Yeah.
to use for um, injections into patients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you mentioned writing and communication is important. Have you had to learn anything on the technological side that has been a struggle for you being in it?
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely, and one that we're on the advent of is a transition from one platform called Meditech to one
Hmm.
called Epic,
Okay.
and everyone is looking towards um, getting the training for an Epic platform. And
Hmm.
this it's learning a new way to communicate. For the 20 years that I've been there, we've been on a Meditech platform learning the Meditech communications. Now going into an Epic platform, it'll be new and everyone says it's better.
Yeah.
But until you walk it out, I think that's something that's looming as something we're going to have to learn rather quickly in 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any, I just kind of like to ask this, is there any AI? Does that affect you at all?
I know it's funny that you should ask because I think I watch the New England Journal of Medicine listserv and the JAMA listservs that talk about AI and the oncoming uh, elements of it. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that is something that's looming. It's not in our face yet, but the subtleties are there, which is like, if you want a drug information question, it's like Google AI pretty much kind of starts it off,
Yeah.
and you choose that or not, and having to search for oneself to find the best answer, the correct answer, is still
Yeah.
a manual task.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with my boss recently about AI. Are we working our way out of a job? Pretty much, doctor answers this order, and uh,
Yeah.
the medication gets dispensed. And you're
Okay.
like, he kind of had an interesting perspective, and I give him all the credit for it. And that is,
Yeah.
some of that will take place,
Yeah.
and the work will have to be, as I just mentioned, where um, the potholes of information exist, is where pharmacists would step in to say, hey, is that economically feasible? Hey, maybe this dose is preferable because of this patient, because this AI doesn't know all the ins and outs of
Yeah.
what's visible at the
Yeah.
bedside.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that AI brings to the table. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very powerful tool, but I pray that it's not the crutch that keeps us complacent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I see AI more as a tool.
Hmm.
I see that in the professions that I've worked. I think it's a great tool to work alongside, right? Like, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, it was computers,
Hmm.
right? It's like computers, and some people were scared of them, other people just dove right in. I think AI is that, right? It's a tool. It's just another tool,
Hmm.
right? I see um, when I taught fourth grade, there were some kids that wanted to use calculators, and I would let them. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, here's a calculator. But if you're reading a word problem and there's all these numbers, like it's not going to help you. The calculator's not going to help you if you don't
Hmm.
know if you're supposed to add, subtract, what you're supposed to do with the numbers. It's just once you set up the problem, it'll calculate it in an
Hmm.
instant.
Yeah.
Okay. Same thing with AI, right? Like you mentioned, like this, there's still a requirement for us to input so that we get the desired output, right?
Exactly. I think it's a matter of also reading what AI puts in front of you
Yeah.
to see if the answer fits the context of the situation.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, it's a tool. I mean,
Yeah.
do you just take it at point blank range and just regurgitate it? Then
Yeah.
who really gets the credit?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of healthcare and a lot of biology, our biology is really a big unknown in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, how our heart beats, yes, we've kind of studied it and we can kind of read volumes about every cardiac cell that exists, and kind of explain it away.
Yeah.
But it's still a mystery, the day in and the day out, how we're here at this table talking.
Yeah.
There's still some unknowns. And so when we try and solve them, reach for a solution using AI to solve a clinical problem, I think we just need to keep it in its proper place. That's a tool to give me information to process and execute a plan.
Yeah.
And I think if we hold it in that context, it becomes less looming and more of
Yeah.
a tool, which is, I think, the way it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think technology always changes and advances. And I don't think people should be worried out there like, oh no, it's gonna take our jobs. I think it jobs and professions evolve,
Mhm.
right? And some things will go away but it'll just create other things, right? It's
Yeah.
just I'm not scared of AI. I think it's a great thing. I think it's just a tool. Um, is there anything that you do as a pharmacist that people may not be aware of? Like we think of pharmacy, and I think of pharmacists, and I just think of like chemicals, and you're just making you're just
Yeah,
working with. I just think of
yeah.
chemistry, biology, and like you said, labs, and I'm just here making concoctions. Is there
uh,
anything you do that's outside of that that might be surprising?
I don't know about surprising. I think um, when we leverage our, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I like
Yeah.
so many different things. Um, uh, what did I do on the side that kind of is? I like exploring ideas
Okay.
that come across um, the healthcare literature and try and extrapolate to some kind of personal writings. I mean, if you want to call it that. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's a personal thing or work thing, which way do you?
Either one. Either one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, let me go down this path just for a minute. It's like the
Sure.
other day they were talking about how they found microplastics in placentas,
Okay.
and I'm like, that's really a fascinating concept.
Okay.
That our world, with as much plastic as we're surrounded by, has invaded the placental space.
Yeah.
And like, it's kind of really weird, like it got me thinking. So I just kind of decided to um, review the elements of writing an essay, and I wrote an essay on
Oh, really?
microplastics,
Yeah.
and trying to kind of put it out there in perspective of like how do we interact with it, and how can we lessen our um, lessen that bio burden
Okay.
that it has on us.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go down the road, I mean, the tires start releasing microplastic polymers. If you go to the
Yeah.
beaches, there's microplastics on the beach, and so
Yeah.
what's the solution? So I kind of posed it as you could call it a manifesto of somebody's got to be studying how to remove plastic from our bodies, or how to I
Yeah.
know the word is recycle, but I think that takes even more energy um,
Yeah.
to reuse it. But there's got to be a way to address that in the years to come. And so that got me
Yeah.
going down a different path. I
That's
like
good.
writing. I like reading. I like exploring music as well. So
Oh,
yeah,
nice. Very cool. And then is there at work, do you still have an opportunity to do any research? I know
oh, yeah.
earlier you mentioned,
Mm.
research wasn't for you and then you went a different path. And so,
Yeah,
uh,
it's in the form of process improvements.
okay.
So when we use a certain amount of medications, say IV iron medications, and how we give that to our OB moms, I've been researching. What's the value of IV iron? What does it have? What does it do to a mom's down the road? And
Yeah.
it helps with postpartum depression. It helps with obviously red blood cell development. So I'm able to see, are we using IV iron optimally? I mean, because it's also expensive.
Yeah.
And so there's ways to do research from drug usage evaluations
Yeah.
and outcomes, and then present that to my boss and the physicians as well to see, hey, what is the uh, current best practices, or how do we fare to best practices? So research still plays a
Yeah.
part of my life.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. You mentioned in high school you liked biology, chemistry. What would you say to someone that is interested in, or possibly interested in pharmacy, and they are interested in biology, the sciences? Any advice as far as what them becoming pharmacists?
Yeah. Well, I would say if you like math and if you like science, and I would just say math and science, because that's kind of thing the bridge. Because
Yeah.
for me, it was more like biology and chemistry. It's like how biology and chemistry coincide to create the dynamic of life. That drew
Okay.
me there.
Yeah.
And if that draws you, explore pharmacy as an option, as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Um, and there's different avenues of pharmacy research that can take place, like at the Health Science Center. They're doing great work with the pharmacology department, where they're actually doing bench work on using new chemical entities to improve life. And so there's that type of research that I started originally with.
Yeah.
Um, in high school, if you like science and if you like math, consider pharmacy as a path forward for you. unfolds a lot of, it interacts with a lot of different professions:
Yeah.
respiratory therapy, dietary, medicine, veterinary schools. Um,
Okay.
yeah, you name it. Every medical pathway has pharmacy associated with it in some form or
Yeah.
fashion.
And if I am a pharmacist, other than working at a hospital or working at like CVS, Walgreens,
Right,
what
right.
opportunities are out there?
Okay. Yeah, I think I've biased myself, and I should have said I'm a hospital pharmacist
Ah, okay.
because
Yeah.
there's the hospital pharmacy path. There's also the um, what do you call it? Retail path.
Yeah.
But by the same token, there's also the managerial path, and then there's your industrial paths that pharmacy can lead you to. I've got friends in those spaces and places that have used it to their advantage to build on new career paths.
Yeah.
When it comes to like the retail environment, I would say there's residency trainings there as well.
Okay.
UT has I think a partnership with HEB to do a retail residency where they spend a year there learning the different operations and expectations of retail pharmacists, and where
Oh,
they're
okay.
more, I would say, ambulatory care oriented.
Yeah.
Patients come in, need a blood pressure check, find out what blood pressure med they're on to help manage or communicate, be the liaison between patient and the doctor to say, hey, this particular medication is either too strong or too weak, or maybe
Yeah.
not the right one because their lab values show something else. And
Yeah.
so in the hospital world, excuse me, we're able to see lab values faster than the retail environment. But
Okay.
they're in both ways, learning what those lab values are and speaking on behalf of the patient. We serve as advocates to the physician, to the nurse
Yeah.
practitioners, to
Okay.
help put new solutions or safer solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. You also mentioned that you work with pharmacy technicians.
Mhm.
So pharmacists and pharmacy technicians are different.
Career paths.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And pharmacy technicians is like an associate's degree, like a 2-year
It c
degree.
I think that's the trajectory. There's also 9-month programs. I've even heard
Oh,
that,
okay.
um, I've heard also that some retail settings can provide the training and then give, an individual a job as a pharmacy technician. It's a shorter path
Yeah.
to, working in the pharmacy space. Like oh, in our hospital, pharmacy technicians work in the IV lab, work with medication distribution, medication acquisition, and even some of the billing elements of it, because
Mm.
medications they're expensive,
Yeah.
and um, one pharmacist can't do all of that. So
Yeah.
pharmacy technicians are the right hand to the left hand of pharmacist
Okay.
work.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of dynamic interplay to every medication order that's out there. It's got to be the right drug, the right dose, the right frequency, the right patient. There's
Yeah.
different rights that go into play with what is dispensed, and when we take it to the fullest, it takes many hands to make sure that it is as such.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
I think somewhere around 9 months it can take for a pharmacy technician to get their pharmacy technician certificate and licensure as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very cool. And then so in your, do you have a team that you work with at your, you mentioned when you're in the lab,
Mhm.
what does that look like? Is it just you and the tech
Oh, me,
or,
it's I'm responsible for the IV lab, and then I'll have like three technicians.
okay.
One that'll handle non-chemo and chemotherapy agents, because chemotherapy is a hazardous medication in a general sense. If when you say chemotherapy, it's really disrupting your biology,
Okay.
and so that requires an extra level of detail and an extra level of protection, not only for the pharmacy technician and pharmacist, but we want all those in play, and it requires focused attention.
Yeah.
And so that's my team, so to speak. And then opposite of me, outside of the Ivy Lab, is another pharmacist that handles and works with other pharmacy technicians in the distribution side from the central pharmacy.
Yeah.
And the other pharmacists that I work with work in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, the PICU, the pediatric intensive care unit, the emergency department, the hematology oncology ward,
Wow.
um, and then the OB service line as well. So there's so different places where pharmacists work, and we collaborate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Wow.
that's Monday through Friday. Well, sorry, that's 7 days a week. Yeah.
Yeah. So are there other pharmacists that work different schedules from you?
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah. Like I said, the NICU, the PICU, the HEMOC, all those are
Yeah.
they call them decentralized pharmacists,
Yeah.
and so they round with physicians. They go to the bedsides and they listen with the
Yeah.
other interdisciplinary people that are there, whether it's the dietitian, the nurse, physician, the nurse practitioner, to say, if they're in the ICU, they're looking at, what is the plan for the day? How quickly does it need to be communicated to pharmacy to make something or
Yeah.
deliver something or change an order on? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So your schedule you mentioned was 7 to 3.
Mhm.
And then is it like, so I interviewed a firefighter, his is 24 hours on, 48 hours off.
Right.
So when he leaves, there's someone coming in.
Oh yeah.
So when you leave, there's pharmacists coming in at 3.
Yeah, there's an overlap. There's an overlap
Okay.
of about an hour so that I can give a proper handoff to the next team if
Okay.
there's something waiting or pending for delivery,
Okay.
or for a need, whether it's at 9 o'clock at night or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then around 9 o'clock, there's another pharmacist that'll come in to carry the shift. So there's always a little bit of an overlap and
Yeah.
a handoff. And that we find that very safe to do, very important to do,
Yeah.
because it allows that communication stream to grow on,
Yeah.
from one shift to the next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. Awesome. Um, I want to kind of wrap it up.
Sure.
But what I like that you started with was understanding the mission of where you work, right? I interviewed someone that worked for a nonprofit, and the reason he's in the nonprofit space is that, right?
Mhm.
He but he kind of, um, looking back, he kind of had this mindset. Okay, well, the nonprofit world is very mission and vision driven, and the outside of that, it's very profit driven, right?
Mhm.
But it's interesting for you, for you to bring that and say, well, there's also missions and visions and values,
Oh
right?
yeah.
In these spaces, it's not just the nonprofit.
Yeah, there was we're also a nonprofit, Chris's Children's.
Oh, okay.
And one of the phrases when we started looking and delegating a task to one of our pharmacy technicians to review the billings and accounts receivable
Yeah.
around medications and how they were being billed,
Mm-hmm.
she used a phrase that I still remember. It's like, "We're not for profit, but we're not for loss."
There you
So
go.
you gotta make sure that because the lights have to stay on and people need to still get paid.
Yeah.
So a pharmacy technician assumes that role as well
Yeah.
in terms of tracking high dollar medications. We're talking medications that cost $1 million.
Wow.
And that was something that I crossed my path. I think it was last year,
Yeah.
and yeah, it costs $1 million, and it's a new form of I would call it. You could say genetic engineering
Yeah.
to help alleviate a disease.
Yeah.
And so these high dollar meds need to be tracked properly because yeah, they're
Yeah.
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing you mentioned was, which I really liked, was opportunity, right? And not being scared to take your shot,
Shoot
right?
your shot.
Cause yeah, the people that I've interviewed and my personal story as well wasn't a straight, like what I'm doing now wasn't a straight shot. I could have done what I'm doing now when I was 18 years old, but it took me, it was a path. It was, and then like you said, I took, there were opportunities and I took opportunities and it ended up leading me to where I am now. But I like that. I like that message too.
Opportunities. I mean, and they're really they surround us pretty much every day.
Yeah.
I have the opportunity to do this interview with you.
Yeah.
That's an opportunity. I
Yeah.
could have said no.
Yeah.
There's opportunities to apply in different for different jobs or
Yeah.
whatever a young adult decides to pursue. There's opportunities.
Yeah.
I think we get stuck with phones and social media to try and pseudo solve it for ourselves. And I think
Yeah.
having real conversations
Yeah.
is an important step to say, you know what, I needed to hear that to take that next step.
Yeah.
And I think that's like when I went to Texas Lutheran, it wasn't until a counselor said, "Have you thought about
Yeah.
going to college?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't thought about it." Nobody, nobody, nobody said, "Oh, you should go to college." It's like
Yeah.
she mentioned it, and then I took that time to think about that next step.
Yeah.
So if we listen to the world around us, I think opportunities speak to us. And if
Yeah.
we pause to think, minus, electrical, social media influences, I
Yeah.
think our youth can really find true rich opportunities to
Yeah.
explore.
Yeah. And there is a lot of opportunity in the building of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I have
Oh, yeah.
found as you build relationships, I think that's how a lot of opportunities have come my way through just building relationships and people knowing you, what you do, what you're capable of, your strengths, right? And so, yeah, I like that. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience as we're here?
Oh, I mean, I guess there's lots to share. Keep
Yeah,
reading. I think the more you read, the more you lead,
yeah.
the more you
Readers are
learn.
leaders.
Yes, the more you learn, the more you earn.
Oh, there you go. That's another one.
Yeah, the more you read, the more you lead. The more you learn, the more you earn.
Yeah,
I would say, be creative.
yeah,
Let don't get stuck in your head. Get out there, build relationships. I think tell your story.
yeah.
You know.
I like that. Very cool. Well, thank you so much
Thanks for letting me tell my
for
story a little
coming, and yeah, I
bit.
appreciate it,
Yeah.
man. Thank you. We just want to help people, find their career, their passion, what they're good at. This is what this is all about, right? It stemmed from my daughter. She's in eighth grade. She had to kind of declare her career path for high school, and she didn't know what she wanted to do. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to start interviewing people on what they do, like what's out there, right? Because she didn't know. She was interested in radiology,
Hmm.
but she didn't know. What we ended up finding out was you can be a radiologist, which is kind of like you said, a pharmacist, or
Or
you
for
can
the
be a
physician.
tech.
Yeah. Okay, a
Yeah.
radiology technician.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
you can be a technician. And she's like, oh no, I don't want to do like, I want to be the tech. And I'm like, okay, well, let's research on that. And right. And so, cause I didn't know, I didn't know any of that stuff. And so, um, this is kind of what inspired this channel.
Good.
And
Good on
so,
you. I'm proud of
yeah,
you for doing it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to interview just, anyone that has any kind of career worth pursuing,
Got it.
even like hobbies and side hustles. And,
Yeah.
I think all of it's important. And
Fly
so
fishing.
there you go. Yeah, I'll find one of those eventually. So very cool. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to My Line of Work. If today's story inspired you or intrigued you, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. If you have a career you are curious about, drop it in the comments below. We'd love to feature it. And so, hasta la próxima.
Yeah.